It all began with the scent of roasted espresso and the clink of ceramic mugs in a cozy downtown café, the kind of place where nobody expected fate to interrupt their morning. Linda Lane had worked at Teamont Cafe for just 2 days. She wasn't supposed to be there that morning. She had picked up the shift for a friend with the flu. Her apron was slightly crumpled, her hair falling loose from a rushed ponytail, and her heart still raw from a sleepless night spent staring at the ceiling of her studio apartment, wondering how she'd pay rent this month. And then it happened. She spun too fast with a tray in hand. A rush of motion, a startled yelp, and a sharp splash of scalding coffee collided with a suit that screamed wealth, power, and precisely pressed expectations. Linda froze mid-motion, clutching a crumpled stack of napkins she'd instinctively grabbed. Her eyes widened as the coffee dripped in slow, unforgiving trails down the lapel of his steel-gray blazer. The cafe seemed to fall silent. The hum of conversation, the clatter of cups, the steaming hiss of milk frothers, everything stopped. The man turned toward her slowly, like a storm coiling before thunder. He was tall, sharply defined, with dark hair swept back in an immaculate part and a jaw that looked carved from authority itself. His eyes, cold and unflinching, narrowed as he surveyed the damage. I'm so sorry, Linda stammered, her voice soft but trembling with genuine remorse. It was my fault, please. Let me pay for the cleaning. He didn't blink. This is a $3,000 suit, he said, each syllable laced with disdain as though the words themselves were too valuable to waste on her. The moment cracked like glass under pressure. Mugs were frozen mid-air. Conversations stalled mid-sentence. Even the sunlight seemed to dim, casting shadows over the barista counter as the clouds outside shifted. Someone's child stopped crying, curiosity outweighing distress. Sorry doesn't clean Armani, he added, his tone sharp enough to slice through her composure. Linda flinched, the apology curled on her tongue, dissolving into silence. But then, something shifted. Instead of crumbling, she straightened. Her pulse hammered, but her chin lifted. Her eyes, wet but defiant, met his. You're right, she said quietly. If I could rewind 5 seconds, I would. But I can't. All I can do is mean it. And I do. No excuses. No dramatics. Just her, sincere, raw, and unshaken in her regret. And strangely, it disarmed him. The man faltered, not visibly, but internally. Something cracked through the steel in his spine. He reached into his coat, produced a handkerchief, and began patting at the stain in silence. His posture softened, if only slightly. The air was thick. Unspoken tension mingled with confusion. He looked down at her name tag. Linda, Teamont Cafe. He didn't know she'd been laid off from the public library just 3 weeks prior. He didn't know she had cried herself to sleep the night before, or that she'd taken this job out of desperation, not choice. But in that moment, something registered in his gaze. Without another word, he set a business card on the counter. I'll have it cleaned, he said, voice cooled to a simmer. Then, almost as an afterthought, be careful next time. That was hot. Linda blinked, nodding. Yes, sir. Thank you. He turned and walked out. The door hissed shut behind him. The space he left behind felt curiously colder. She didn't expect to think about him again, but she did. Across the city, Alan Walker sat behind a glass desk in a sky-high office overlooking Boston. He was a man who had built an empire, Walker Enterprises, brick by calculated brick. He had everything a mogul was expected to have: wealth, power, and an empire bearing his name. But now, with a document spread out before him, everything hung by a thread. 60 days. That was how long he had before the clause in his late father's will kicked in. If Alan wasn't married by the end of the quarter, his company would be absorbed by a rival, Blake International. His father's legacy, and Alan's entire life's work, would become little more than a footnote in someone else's victory. He had tried everything: matchmakers, arranged dates, executives with picture-perfect resumes, but they all blurred together. Women chasing a title. Not a man. Then he remembered her. Linda. The barista who hadn't groveled, who had apologized but hadn't begged. who had looked at him not with awe or fear, but with honesty. He opened his phone. "Carla," he said to his assistant. "I want to bring someone in for a new assistant trial. The morning shift barista at Tamont Café. Blonde, mid-20s, spilled coffee on me." There was a long silence. "Sir? You're suggesting we hire a barista?" "A temporary role, discreet. Just bring her in." "Yes, sir." He didn't know if she'd accept. But for the first time in months, his mind wasn't on the company. It was on a girl with trembling hands and steady eyes. Linda had no idea what awaited her when she stepped into Walker Enterprises. She had never applied for any such job, but the offer had come through in a formal call, and something inside her, instinct maybe, told her to say yes. She entered the top-floor office to find him already standing behind a desk that could rival a yacht in size. The same man. The suit now spotless. His expression unreadable. "Miss Lane," he said, motioning to the chair across from him. "Thank you for coming." "I'm not sure why I'm here," she replied honestly. "I've never worked in an office. I don't even own a real resume." "I need someone who thinks quickly, speaks honestly, and isn't intimidated by titles," he said. "You got that from me spilling coffee on you?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. A small twitch of amusement touched his mouth. It was a memorable introduction. Days turned into weeks. She became his assistant, but she didn't act like anyone who had worked for him before. She didn't flatter, didn't hover. She made coffee too strong, corrected him when he barked at staff. "People work better when they feel seen," she said once in a meeting, and the room froze. Alan had stared at her, surprised. No one spoke to him like that, but somehow he listened. Meetings ran smoother. The office softened. Even the board noticed. "You seem lighter," one executive remarked. Alan said nothing. But inside, he knew why. Her. Linda, who returned to her tiny apartment each night to care for her godmother. Who read to children at the local library on weekends. Who made the entire world feel more human. Late one evening, he found her asleep in a chair in his office, arms wrapped around a tablet. He draped a blanket over her and turned off the lights without a word. No one had ever softened him like that. They traveled together, to conferences, meetings, late-night dinners. Their connection deepened, not just through shared tasks, but glances, laughter, moments where words weren't needed. And then, during a rainstorm that halted subways and flooded streets, she was stuck in the office. He insisted she stay in the executive suite. That night, over Thai food and soft jazz, the unspoken tension finally crested. She looked at him. He leaned in, and stopped. Not because he didn't want to kiss her, but because he did. And because he hadn't told her the truth. He hadn't told her she had been part of a plan, a backup to a marriage deal that now felt like the worst mistake of his life. The time for truth was coming. He just didn't expect it to come so soon. She found the email accidentally. A legal draft on his screen. Prenup Plan B. Linda Lane. The words tore through her. Candidate A fallback. Proximity for public narrative. Seamless transition. She read it once, then again. Her hands shook. Her world tilted. When he walked in moments later, she met his gaze with fire. "You thought I wouldn't find out?" "Linda, wait. No. Don't. Don't insult me with lies after you built everything on one." He tried to explain. That he had changed. That he hadn't meant for it to go this far. That she was never just a plan. "But I was," she said bitterly. "Convenient. Accessible. Second choice." And then, with tears in her eyes and no more words left, she walked out. And this time, he didn't chase her. Alan Walker's empire didn't matter anymore. Not without her. 3 days passed. He barely ate, barely slept. He returned to the cafe every morning, sat in the same seat, waited. But she never came. On the 7th day, he wrote his resignation by hand, presented it to the board. Walked away from it all. When asked why, he simply said, "If I can't have something built on truth, I don't want it at all." He found her weeks later outside the library, closing up after a volunteer shift. Rain softened the edges of the city around her. He walked toward her, slow, careful. "I'm not here to fix anything," he said. "Just to tell the truth." She said nothing. "I was scared," he admitted. "I thought if I could control everything I wouldn't get hurt. But then you came in, and nothing followed the script anymore." He reached into his coat and handed her the original coffee shop receipt. On the back, in his handwriting, "The best mistake of my life. If you still remember, I'll be at the same table." He stepped back and walked away. The next morning, the bell above the cafe door chimed softly. He stood as she entered. "I wasn't sure until today," she said. "May I get you a coffee?" "Only if you promise not to spill it." He smiled and handed her a cup. Inside, nestled on a napkin, was a velvet ring box. He dropped to one knee. "No contracts, no lies. I don't want perfect. I want real. I want you." And this time, her answer